Golf Smarter, number 351, published on October 2, 2012.
Welcome to Golf Smarter Mulligans, your second chance to gain insight and advice from the best instructors featured on the Golf Smarter podcast. Great golf instruction never gets old. Our interview library features hundreds of hours of game improvement conversations like this that are no longer available in any podcast app.
In my time on the first tee and talking to people and trying to promote this just on an individual basis, guess where the most complaints have come from?
Women.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're kidding.
Absolutely.
I was just going to be as outrageously silly.
I know. That's what I mean. That's the outrageous answer. I mean, I've had them go up one side of me and down the other, dress me down about wanting to move the tees up so more women could enjoy the game. And yet, what's the big movement by the PGA of America? The great untapped resource for more golfers is women. Okay, let's have them play from the equivalent of 7,400 yards. Guess what'll happen? They'll be slow, they won't have any fun, and they'll quit. Literally annually for 30 years, I've heard that the great influx of golfers were going to be women. It has never happened. One starts, one quits. I mean, women aren't stupid, for heaven's sakes. Maybe if we made the game a little more amenable to them on course, maybe they'd stick around for a while. What happens at clubs is the good women players don't want to give up their advantage.
Former CEO of Adams Golf, Barney Adams, on Tee It Forward.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing tips and insights from golfers and golf professionals to help lower your score. It's worked for your host, Fred Green.
Welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast, Barney.
Well, thank you for having me on.
And thank you. We're doing Skype. You and I are looking at each other, and you've just entered a whole new world, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I'm very uncomfortable. This is like leaving the country or something here for me.
You are in a different part of the country. You're actually in a different part of the planet right now.
Yes, yes. I'm in the. I did a story one time on the internet and went viral, and I had to look it up to see what it meant. So that's where I am.
What was the story?
That was the original Tee It Forward story.
Oh, really? And
yes.
And it went viral, and you like, what does that mean? People
kept asking, he said, hey, your story went viral, and I thought it was a disease. I didn't know what it was. There was something wrong with it.
Well, welcome to Skype.
Thank you.
And so now, and to make you even more uncomfortable, we're looking at one another.
Yes. I'm looking down. I'm not looking at you, so it doesn't mean I'm looking at my shoes.
Well, we could. I know.
Or my
actually,
socks. As the case would be, it's socks.
But do you know what? As you're looking at your socks, I'm looking at the top of your head because you're tilting your head right into the camera.
I know. I have a Texas A&M sweatshirt on for my grandson.
Oh, is that where your grandson goes?
Yep.
Well, I have a USC shirt on right now.
Okay.
Okay, that's the end of that conversation.
Yes.
But let's talk about Tee It Forward, among other things. I mean, there's about 100 things I wanted to talk to you about, but I think that we should start with Tee It Forward.
Okay.
What is it? Let's start from scratch here. What is Tee It Forward?
It's very misunderstood.
Well, here's your soapbox, my friend.
Yep. The name implies that it's about moving people up one or even two sets of tees. And that's not true.
Oh.
Yes.
And that's exactly what I thought it was.
Yeah, I know. Everybody does.
Then who came up with this name?
That was my message to the PGA when we started all this. This is a lot more complicated than just moving up a set of tees. Because speaking as a golfer, obviously, there are some the whole thing. I got to back up a step because to put it in perspective.
Sure.
I had played a round of golf. I go out to the California desert in the wintertime. Beautiful place, beautiful weather, beautiful courses, et cetera, et cetera. And I had played golf that particular day, and I was sitting home in the evening basically whining to myself about what a lousy time I had. And then I thought to myself, this is really dumb. You just played in a beautiful golf course with nice guys, good weather, et cetera, and you're sitting around complaining. There's something wrong with you. Well, then got looking into it deeper. Why was I complaining? Well, I didn't really have a good time. Well, why didn't I have a good time, et cetera, et cetera. And basically, when I finished all of the analysis and went on the internet, looked up, I do know how to do that. I went on the internet, looked up data, and so on and so forth. We had played that day from 6,700 yards. Mm-hmm. When I figured out the difference between relative distances between tour players and amateur players, that was equivalent to a tour player playing from roughly 8,500 yards.
Wow.
Exactly. Wow. And no tour player would do that. That's dumb.
No, I mean, the courses are being made longer and longer and longer these days, but is that to anybody's advantage?
Well, like I say, why do I, with my skills, need to play from the equivalent of 8,400 yards?
And what's your index about? So we have a sense of your
it's
skills
not,
when you say that.
It's let's say it's rapidly escalating along with my age. It's it's about 10 now, I think, and
that's good.
But all the indicators are going up. So it's anyway. So as I got into this, it dawned on me that for whatever sets of reasons, amateur golfers have gotten to a position where they're playing courses that are much longer than the tour would play. Now, golf lost 1.1 million people last year. That's between 1.1 and 1.4, depending on which data source you access. And the reasons given were no fun, too slow. Not cost. No fun, too slow. And I'll get to cost. Well, if you're playing from 8,400 yards, guess what? It's going to be slow, and it's not going to be any fun. Yeah. So let's play. Then when I looked at the tour data, the average iron hit into a par 4 on tour is an 8-iron. Now, you ask your friends, how many of them average 8 irons into the par 4s on the courses they play? And if they're honest, the answer is none.
Right.
Maybe 1 or 2, okay? You might hit 1 or 2 8-irons, but you don't average 8 irons. You're hitting hybrids, you're hitting fairway woods, etc. So the whole idea behind this was to promote courses being set up so that the amateur players would hit second shots from the same relative area to their games that the tour players do. Now, to make it more specific, what I advocated was that the PGA of America, in partnership with the USGA, come up with a series of small markers. Figure something that's no more than 3 inches in diameter. And you put that in the fairway at 143 yards, which is a relative distance for the amateur compared to the tour player. And you tell golfers, look, if you want to play the same game the tour players do, you tee it up to a point that gets you somewhere in the vicinity of that marker. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Some of you are going to be behind it. Some of you are going to be in front of it. But guess what? On tour, some guys are longer, some guys are shorter. I don't care. Just play from that vicinity. For women, it's 112. That's what Tee It Forward is all about. It's not about moving to the front tees, because on some holes, if you move to the front tees, you might be at 90 yards because it's already a shorter hole.
Right.
Conversely, on par 5s, for most of the par 5s for amateurs, I'd actually move the tees back. Because if you have a par 5, a big par 5, say it's 570. All right, the average amateur, let's figure their tee shot at 220. It's somewhere between 210 and 230, depending upon the speed of the fairways, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I understand, I'm an old club fitter, that everybody that plays golf hits at 250 or 260. I understand that.
At the very least.
That's right. Unfortunately, that's a fantasy.
Yes, exactly.
But it's a fantasy all golfers live with, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the matter is it's roughly 210 to 230. So we pick 220 as an average just to pick a number. And then on their second shot, because it's going to roll along the ground, if they hit it well, it's another, let's say, 210, 200 yards. So let's say we got 220 plus 200, that's 420. Plus 140 is roughly 560. So you can see where I easily get to 560, even 570 for a par 5.
Mm-hmm.
I really dislike par 5s that are roughly between, let's say 480 and 520, because for 99% of the amateurs, they're 3-shot holes. You could hit virtually anything off the tee. You could hit an iron or a fairway wood, another iron or a fairway wood, and still have a fairly short iron into the green. So actually, on my golf courses, while the par 4s would, as a rule, get shorter, but they would be strategically shorter because some would have dog legs and so on. The par 5s, on the whole, would get longer. Mm-hmm. The par 3s are kind of a toss-up because it depends upon how the green is laid out. If it's a Rodin-style green with a lot of bounce area in the front and no water around or anything, could be longer. If it's forced carry, could be shorter. But my point is that the essence of the movement, as I originally construed it, is not about moving to the front tees. That's an oversimplification.
So if I can interpret what you're saying and get this straight, you're saying that the goal is to pretty much make it so everyone's kind of getting to the point where they can hit their 8-iron in as their approach shot.
Roughly. I mean, listen, 143, picking a number, for some people that's a 6-iron. I understand that.
Oh, absolutely,
okay, for some people that's a 9-iron.
So you're looking at a number, not an iron. So
that's correct. What I'm trying to do is say, look, if you went out to play, you could go up and you get a chance to scrimmage with Golden State. Mm-hmm. They're not going to move the baskets to 12 feet.
No. They're
going to let you shoot at a 10-foot basket, right?
Yeah.
That's all I want to do.
Right. But if you play with the Mavericks, will they put it up to 12 feet?
I've been working out with them regularly. I'm thinking I'm making a comeback. But, think of the publicity value. I mean, I'd be the only guy in the NBA with an artificial knee, okay? I mean, that's worth a lot of money to the Mavericks.
Oh, yeah, that's a marketing
I'm negotiating with them right now.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure the Cuban would love to discuss that with you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. It's a moneymaker. It's guaranteed. I just want a piece of it, that's all.
Actually, we have a minor league baseball team here in Marin County. This was their first year. And in the last week of the season, do you remember Bill Spaceman Lee?
Oh, sure I do. Yeah.
Well, Bill, he played for Boston in the Expos. He holds the record as the most starts for a left-hander in Red Sox history, right? Pitched in the 70s. He grew up in this county. He went to the same high school my kids went to. He pitched a game. They paid him to pitch a game at 65 years old.
Good for him.
He pitched a complete game, went 1 for 3 with a sacrifice and an RBI at the plate, and got a 9-5 victory.
I think I remember reading about him that he always kept himself in great physical condition. He was
well, I'd say he's got a nice beer belly popping through the bottom of that jersey of his, but he does play. He still plays hardball. He lives in Vermont.
Something's right with that arm, because you'd hurt yourself.
It was hilarious. He was throwing junk up there. It was so much fun to watch these youngsters just totally baffled by what he was throwing at him. But, Clemens
is going to start for Houston. Houston can't throw
he's
anybody
only
anyway.
50. I mean, come on, that's nothing.
He's a kid.
Right.
He's a kid.
65. This guy was pitching, and it was.
But guess
the
what?
Crowd went nuts, and it was a bunch of old hippies sitting in the stands. It was hilarious.
They're both throwing from 90 feet, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
They didn't move the mound back to 120 feet.
That's correct.
That's my whole argument about golf.
Yeah, I had this visual in my head that we were going to put a hotel sign called the 8-Iron Inn. But now
you're in that business.
Yeah,
okay?
right. So 143-yard approach shot. Okay, so how do we do that? Where do we tee up from?
Well,
if we're not moving up,
I don't care where you tee up from. I mean, come on, you guys are smart people. Figure it out. I'm just going to show you where you should
tee
hit
up
it.
Wherever you want. Your initial tee shot, you can go from wherever you want as long as you're in at approximately 145 yards to your approach.
You'll figure it out. You'll figure out what set of tees work for you.
Well, it seems like, especially on golf courses where they're mostly people, and if you have an artificial knee, do you walk a golf course or you take a cart?
Both. Depends where I play.
Yeah. So if people are in golf carts, they're never going to talk to each other then. If they're all teeing up from different spots.
They're not going to tee up, but that's my point. You see, you got them teeing up from different spots because you're trying to get them all to 143. That's one of the misconceptions. We tee them up from the same spot, and guess what? Some of the guys are going to be longer, and they're going to hit it to 120, and some are going to be shorter, they're going to hit it to 160.
So then why is that different than having multiple sets of tees?
I'll tell you exactly why. If you're playing against me, and we're playing for something, okay?
Okay, I'll play for that.
All right, we're going to play for something, okay? Uh-huh. And let's say, for the sake of argument, I'm longer than you are.
Okay.
And I got a 6-iron into the green, and you got a hybrid.
Okay.
Who's got the edge?
You do.
You bet your life. Now we play from the tees that I want us to play from, and I'm still longer than you are, You've got a 7-iron into the green, and I've got a 9-iron into the green. Mm-hmm. Who's got the edge?
You still do. But
Maybe.
But now all of a sudden
and now you stick that 7-iron up there 15 feet, which you probably couldn't do with a hybrid. And now I got to hit my shot, and it's for a couple of bucks, and you're looking at me and say, "Here, good luck, Barnyard."
Hey, you know what? You made me very nervous. I thought you were going to tell me where to stick that 7-iron for a second.
Yeah, but see my point?
Yeah.
And that's one of the misconceptions. We're going to have people teeing off all over the place because everybody has to get to exactly 143. Ain't going to happen.
Right.
Ain't going to happen.
So why is that different than having the blue tees, the white tees, the black tees, and the red tees?
I don't care what color they are. You can make them polka dot.
But why is that different? Why is that make that a different program?
Because we now understand where we have to drive the golf ball to play the same equivalent game as the tour players. That's the mitigating factor that's different.
Playing the same game is okay.
Equivalent.
Okay.
You aren't going to be as good as they are, and you're not going to hit your 8-iron 160 like they do.
Right. Oh, God. That would be fun.
We're going to have you hit your 8-iron and play from an equivalent distance because we're going to make the game faster and we're going to make it more fun. And what happens when you start doing that, things enter the equation that have been absent for a while, like pars and an occasional birdie. You play faster. I mean, I think one of the great travesties in golf was the definition of the 4-hour round. Because if 4 hours is the average, then I guess 4:15 or 4:20 is okay. And I can crawl most golf courses with my bad knee in 4:20. To me, that's ludicrous. But anyway, you'll speed up play, and you'll, as I said before, you'll have more fun. And you should and you will stem the tide of people dropping out because it's an enjoyable experience, and also enhance the opportunity for people to start playing the game. You know, let's say we're going to get 8 new golfers. Mm-hmm. And we're going to send some lessons and, outfit them with clubs and all of that kind of stuff. And now we take it to the golf course and tee it up from 8,000 yards. It's like driving people to a bad movie. You can go in a limousine. You can give them popcorn. You can do all kinds of things to make it a better deal. But at the end of the day, it's still a bad movie.
Right.
Let's fix the movie.
Right. But the experience may have been a little better because it cost them nothing.
Maybe
if you're being
maybe, but it took a long time.
See, here's what I don't understand about this, Barney, and maybe I'm missing something. And usually when I play with people and we're trying to decide what tee boxes we're playing from, mm-hmm. they'll say, "Oh, well, let's see. This is 6,600 yards. This is 7,000 yards. This is 6,200 yards. Mm-hmm. Let's play from 66." And I'm saying, why does that matter? Let's look at the rating and the slope. To me, that is the great equalizer when I say, oh, but if you play from the front tees, it's a 122. The middle tees is a slope of a 128, and then a 135. Well, I'm not good when I don't play as well from a slope of 135, and I score really well on a 120. So I try to play 128 to 127, 128, 29, around in there. Why you keep talking about yardage, but you're not talking about rating and slope?
Who cares? Don't get me started on rating and slope. I belong to a golf course that's 7,100 yards from the back and 6,100 from the front, and I have the same handicap from 4 different sets of tees. That's impossible.
Yeah, that's impossible.
Yeah, but it happens all the time. I get letters all the time from people on that subject. I don't even go there.
So you think that the rating and slope is useless?
Simple. I'm a very simple person. You had to teach me how to make this phone call. I have very limited capabilities. I just want a little marker out there that says hit the ball around this area and you'll be playing from the same relative distance as the tour. No more, no less.
But it's all based on yardage.
It's all based on yardage. That's correct.
And you say rating slope is something that is making it too complicated because nobody can explain it.
I stood on the tee the other day and conducted a little experiment because all the guys that hit at 250, and we had a flag out there and we had a gun and we lasered it and it was 218. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, obviously, if it's 218 and you hit at 250, you should carry that, right? Mm-hmm. A, nobody carried it.
Of course.
B, very few guys got there in less than the first hop. And C, they all left still thinking they hit at 250.
So we're back to yardage.
Yep, I'm trying to boil this thing down to the narrowest possible, simplest possible explanation. And quite frankly, I sort of have another plan, except it's a little out of my purview. But if I could find a sponsor, I would initiate a series of tournaments, kind of like the Oldsmobile Scramble type of thing, except that it would be a different format. Mm-hmm. But to get people used to playing from these distances. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a great way to kick this thing off.
So you're taking some credit for this idea of the tee it forward idea, the concept of the yardage and getting people to play it. Or
I wrote the original story, and then I got contacted by the PGA and the USGA, and they said this is a good idea. And they said,
and it never crossed their mind before. Really?
Oh, I'm sure it did. As a matter of fact, I got letters from some of the guys I knew in the media that said, "Hey, we've written about this before too. There's nothing new in golf." Right. I think I just took a little different approach by equating it to tour players, and it caught on. That's all.
I see. That was your hook.
Yeah, I guess that's it's. I'm not interested in taking credit for anything. I'm an old person. I like peace and quiet. I'd like to play from tees where I can enjoy. I play golf with Lee Trevino.
Nice.
Last I heard, he was a pretty good player.
Yeah. Is he a lot of fun to play with?
Yeah, and he hits it 255 off the tee, not 253, not 257, 255.
Wow.
That's the world he lives in. You know what tees he plays? He plays the up tees.
Why?
Because he said, you know exactly what he told me. He said, I want to be able to hit the same shots into the green I always did.
Oh.
And there it is.
Yeah.
There it is. I mean, this is Trevino talking about. And I promise you, I've never seen an amateur at any level that can hit the ball close to as well as he hits it today. And I have been around.
Yeah. You've seen a couple golfers play.
I have been around.
I see a huge stumbling block in all this. Golfers' egos.
No fooling. I'm glad you caught on to that.
Because guys are we're going to play from the blues today. Why?
I belong to a men's club. Give me a break. I live with this stuff. But I'll tell you, there's another reason, too. It's a little more subtle, but it's equally powerful.
And?
One of the great things about golf is that it's played to a set of standards as a general rule. And I mean, they can always find exceptions. But it's played to a very high set of standards, I might add. Mm-hmm. People play by the rules. For example, in the equipment business, if you come out with a golf club that's miraculous but doesn't fit the rules of golf, people won't buy it. They want to play by the rules, which kind of, to me, adds veracity to they also be willing to play from the same distance the tour players do. But the bottom line is that when you have this sense of integrity about the game, and all of a sudden you're playing from distances that are 20, 30, 40 yards closer than you used to, you feel guilty. You feel like you're wrong. You feel like you're cheating.
Right.
That's part of the educational process. It's not true, but that's the feeling. So that, to me, is as strong a feeling as ego. And I'll give you a little one that you would never figure. In my time on the first tee and talking to people and trying to promote this just on an individual basis, guess where the most complaints have come from?
Women.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're kidding.
Absolutely.
I was just going to be as outrageously silly.
I know. That's what I mean. That's the outrageous answer. But I mean, I've had them just go up one side of me and down the other, dress me down about wanting to move the tees up so more women could enjoy the game. And yet, what's the big movement by the PGA of America? The great untapped resource for more golfers is women. Okay, let's have them play from the equivalent of 7,400 yards. Guess what'll happen? They'll be slow, they won't have any fun, and they'll quit. I've been in the golf business almost 30 years. Literally annually for 30 years, I've heard that the great influx of golfers were going to be women. It has never happened.
Right.
One starts, one quits.
Yep.
Maybe if we made the game, I mean, women aren't stupid, for heaven's sakes. maybe if we made the game a little more amenable to them on course, maybe they'd stick around for a while.
And you
but
think
what
this
happens
is one of those
clubs,
things? You think?
Yeah, what happens at clubs is the good women players don't want to give up their advantage.
Oh, right.
That's simple.
But, and how much, and I've always felt this way about, like, the Golf Channel, is that they cater, if that's the right word, to the single-digit, players, the better players who aren't willing to give up, the ones that you're talking about that aren't willing to give up something. And yet there's such a small minority of golfers.
Sure, but you got one thing about golf. It's a top-down influence game.
Absolutely.
I mean, you go out in the range and watch to see what the 18 handicapper is doing so you can get better?
No, I watch TV.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's I mean, I understand that. I do, however, fault the Golf Channel. It's one of the advantages of being old and retired. I can speak my mind.
And being on a podcast that nobody's listening to.
Yeah, exactly right. They ought to be all over this. And the reason they ought to be all over this is it's good for their business.
Yeah.
It's a business decision. Because when people quit the game, that's viewers.
That's right.
When people take up the game, that's viewers. They ought to be the champion of this movement.
Before, when you said too slow, no fun, I was always saying too slow, too hard.
Yeah, that's semantics.
Okay. You think?
But what I argue against is cost. When I do talks on this thing, the game's too expensive. I say I absolutely 100% disagree with that.
Oh, because that was my third point. You were going to bring that up. It's like it's no fun or too hard, too slow, and it costs too much.
I don't buy that for a second. Sure, Pebble Beach costs too much. It's $600 or something like that. I mean, give me the exceptions. Value. How much would you pay to go to a bad movie?
Yeah, well, I'm still forced to pay $10.
But how? I mean, really, how much would you pay to go to a rotten movie if you knew up front it was going to be bad? You can't make it cheap enough.
Right now, I'm saying I'll just wait till it comes out on cable.
I'll give you $10 if you go to this rotten movie. So no, never mind. It's value. If the game is fun, if people enjoy it, they'll pay a fair price.
And what's going to make them enjoy it more?
Playing it from the proper tee so they're not beating their brains out all the time.
Making the game easier.
I don't think whoa. Where did easier come into all this?
No,
I must have missed when I said that.
No, you didn't. I'm saying I think it's about scoring is going to make it more fun. Better scoring. So many people are like,
really, and you're going to score better when you get up there.
No, it's still going to be hard to do.
You bet your life it is. It's a whole. Believe me, I had this conversation. I talked to guys I played with. And I talked them into moving up a set of tees, and of course they gave me a hard time, and blah, 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 blah. And we got around to one hole, and everybody had wedges to the green. Nobody hit the green. And I said to him, gosh, this is really getting easy from up here. I said, we're going to shoot nothing.
Yeah, right.
It isn't easier.
No.
It's just more relative. I guess that's a double comparative. It's just relative.
Yeah, it's relative, but is that significantly changing it? You think that makes the change?
I know it makes a huge change.
Really?
I know it because I've heard from other people. I've forgotten how much fun this game could be.
So how do you do it when you step up to the tee on the first tee, you got your foursome together, you say, all right, we're going to do it a little bit differently today. We're going to play from, and what is it that you're agreeing upon?
I don't know. You're going to play from wherever you want. You're just going to know that out there's a marker, and that's where you should be hitting your second shot from, and you'll learn. I mean, come on, golfers aren't dumb. They'll figure it out. There's this mental, there's this thing, I don't know what the word is, that we have to present golfers with pristine, specific information like they're a bunch of morons. They don't know what to do. And, okay, now you have to go to this tee and then step 3 steps backwards or do this. Come on. Golfers are, as a rule, are very intelligent people. If they know that that the 10-foot basket is out there where that little marker is on the fairway, and they also know that it's okay to be a little short of it or to be past it because after all, it's not a specific game. They'll figure it out. I don't have to. I'm not going to tell them. To me, that's nuts. That's where you get into trouble. Well, I should play here because I hit a 260 off the tee. Oh, okay. You don't. But now what do we do? That's why I say I get away from all that stuff.
So then the buy-in from the golf courses to participate in this is nothing more than putting a marker at 140x yards.
Yeah, and I think it should be done under the auspices of the PGA, where the regional guy comes out and officially does says, yeah, we've just signed up the Fred Green Country Club and so on, and they got the markers, etc. And then I would also suggest that they start that off with an event, because there's an education process involved to do just what you were asking, to help people find out where they should tee off from and so on.
Yeah.
Maybe a series of events. But, I mean, it's more than just sticking the markers in the fairway. That's the first step.
Yeah, I think the education process is huge,
yes,
and I appreciate that you're giving me your time to educate us, because I'm still a little baffled on some of this stuff. I'm wondering.
Well, Fred, you're slow, but you'll pick it up.
It's my internet connection.
I understand.
Barney, do you mind?
Listen, when you think about this tonight, you'll say, "Holy, I got it now. I understand."
Well, that's why. Hopefully, can we continue to? Do you have to run, or can we continue talking about this?
I'm retired. Where do I go?
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do part 2 of this conversation. We're going to hang up. Right? We're not going to hang up. We're just going to let people know that part 2 of this conversation. Yeah, we're going to do a
pretend hang up.
Right, and we're going to tell everybody that the part 2 of this conversation is going to be a Golf Smarter for members only episode. So if you want to hear more about what Barney has to say about this, and actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to want to dig into your history a little bit about how you got to golf. And he's looking up in the sky. He's like, I'm so bored listening to this. He wants
that's okay.
I want to know the history of Adams golf. I'm not about not what's going on now, but how you got started in that, coming from, because you mentioned to me you came from Silicon Valley. So I don't see that you came from being a golf pro and had an idea for a golf club, but you sure turned into something big with that one.
I looked up at the sky, because at this stage, because I've done this many times, I always invent something new every time.
Awesome. All right, so part 2 of this conversation with Barney Adams, formerly of Adams Golf, namesake of Adams Golf, on Golf Smarter for members only. So please go to golfsmarter.com and join today so you don't miss this, or get access to all of our archives of well over 300 episodes of the Golf Smarter podcast. Barney, thank you so much for agreeing for part 2 and for coming on and explaining Teeing It Forward.
You see over my head, by the way, that's a signed picture from my hero, Arnold Palmer.
I was going to ask you about that, because I've been staring. Yes. Every time you look at your socks, I've been looking at that picture going,
well, that's true. And the light reflects off my head, and it kind of blurs the picture, so I wanted to be clear.
No, it doesn't blur it at all. It makes it look like he's under a spotlight.
Yes. Well, yeah, that would help. Yeah.
All right, part 2 coming up. Well, once again, it's time to talk to Terry Koehler, CEO of SCOR Golf, about your questions on your short game. And then Terry answers them. And if he answers your question on the Golf Smarter podcast, you are going to receive a customized SCOR 4161 Money Club for yourself to try out at no charge. Right?
Right.
Hey, Terry.
How you doing, Fred?
I'm doing well, thank you. Got a great question here, because I think it's something that's on the mind of almost every golfer, as they continue to progress in their game and they're starting to figure out that they can't do a lot of stuff. This one comes from Steve Xintas of Baltimore, Maryland, and he says, when I watch golf on TV, I notice there are several times when players hit short little pitch and chip shots, the ball would hit the green, stop, and then back up. Other times, the ball would run out like it does when most of us hit the ball. So how is it possible to get so much spin on the ball from such a short distance with less than a full swing and obtain that kind of reaction?
Well, that's a great question, Steve.
Yeah, it really is.
Spin is one of the great mysteries of shots. And I want to start. There's a bunch of different elements that affect your ability to spin the golf ball. Let's work from the hole backward. One of the first elements is, what kind of greens are you hitting into? And a bent grass green that's a little on the soft side is going to take more spin and react and grab the ball better than a Bermuda grass green that's firmer. You have different turfs are gonna allow that spin to take effect. The other thing is that a lot of people don't look at whether you're pitching that ball into the grain or against the grain. has a lot to do with how you can make that ball react when it hits the green. A third element is the slope. Are you hitting it into a slope, or are you hitting it into a downslope? Has a lot to do with it. When you take those variables out, let's go to what happens between the green and the club. You've got the golf ball, and the pros all play a very high spinning golf ball. A lot of amateurs are playing these balls that are more distance oriented, maybe a little lower price point ball, which is fine. But I have always recommended to people, forget distance, play the highest spinning ball that you can find, and it's going to give you more control around the green. And all the balls are long nowadays. I mean, you're not going to give up 3 or 4 yards. And, I mean, the way the ball lands in the fairway makes a much bigger impact. Well, then you come back to the moment of truth, the club ball impact point. And for a golf ball to be imparted with the maximum amount of spin, a few things have to happen. One thing is that the ball has to adhere to the face of the club and get a good friction on the face of the club. So if you're in grass, if you're in, have a little moisture on it, if the grooves on your club aren't clean, these things all will reduce the amount of spin you can put on the ball. One of my favorite little tricks for when I want to hit a higher spinning shot is I like to focus on the forward edge of the ball, the side of the ball closest to the hole, so that I can make sure I make ball first contact, that club is on the ball before it hits the turf. But there's also, and one of the things you have to understand about the tour players, if you want to learn to spin the ball like them, it's really pretty easy. Go invest thousands of dollars in lessons and spend at least 3 or 4 hours a day hitting these little short shots, because that's what they do.
Yeah.
As the commercial said, these guys are good, and they practice. And when the groove thing changed a few years ago, these guys all went out and spent hours and hours and hours and hours with their wedges and their irons in their hand to try to understand what the new spin was like. And they all learned how to spin the ball just as good with the new grooves as the old grooves. And it goes back to practice. There's a technique that I had a tour player showing me that these guys are all perfecting now, that they're letting the club release more. And you look at a lot of amateurs and they get their hands way out ahead of the ball, and they kind of hood the club down, and they're very stiff-wristed, and they turn their 56-degree sand wedge into a 48 or 49-degree club. They've taken the bounce out of it, and that's not the way to get spin. The way you want to maximize the spin is to let that club, you get the club back, let the club fully release under the ball, so the club head is almost passing your hands when it makes contact on that little short shot, and you have a little higher acceleration in the club head, but you're also adding loft to that shot, and that increases spin. But bear in mind that the golf on TV that we watch is designed for TV audiences, and TV audiences like to see these guys shoot 20 and 25 under. Those of us that are seasoned golfers, we tend to like to see them grind to shoot even par, but that's not what TV is about. So to go back to practice feeling a real crisp click when you hit the ball, to let you know you're really making ball first contact. And don't get all excited about backing the golf ball. I mean, you're not going to probably do that. You're not playing the same kind of greens. But you can learn to check the ball a little better than you probably do, and that comes from using all the loft on the club, and letting that club release through the ball properly, making sure you have really good crisp contact, and you're using a golf ball that'll really take spin, because some balls don't take spin very well, and you're just going to be fighting a losing battle if you're doing that. Make sure the grooves on your club are clean, as I said. I mean, grooves that are filled up with dirt, they're not going to spin the ball very well. Make sure the face of the club is clean.
I'm so glad you're repeating that, because I'm nuts about taking my little metal brush after almost every shot or before every shot and making sure that the grooves are debris free. And people look at me like, why do you carry so much junk? It's like, are you kidding? Do you know what happens when you get all the mud on? It's like hitting a ball that's got mud all over it. It's not going to react the way you hope.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, the equipment, there's a lot happening in that milliseconds that the ball is in contact with the face. And good clean grooves, a good club that's not worn out, But a lot of it's about technique, and don't try to chop down on the golf ball, and don't worry about this really harsh descending blow. Any kind of a I mean that's kind of hard on your joints and everything to be pounding into the ground like that. But just work on really crisp, clean contact, and work on kind of pinching that ball into the turf and letting that leading edge of the club be where you make contact. And practice it, Steve. I mean, it really is about your short game. If you want to be really good, you've got to practice it. And you can go out in an hour and hit 100 to 120 little short game shots because you're not taking these big wind up golf swings, and you'll learn a lot. I mean, just practice different things and experiment. Have fun, be creative, and say, I wonder what happened if I kind of did a little flippy thing with the hands, and just learn a good technique and learn what you know how to do. And then when you're in the golf course and you're trying to determine what kind of shot you want into that flag, walk up there and look at the green, see if the grain is running, at you or away from you, and feel the green. Is it firm and hard up there, and you're going to have to allow for some rollout, or is that green a little mushy under your feet? You say, this is pretty cushiony. Some greens, they have a thick thatch of grass, and it almost is like a spring. The green that you're going to be able to really stick the ball on is going to be a little soft under your feet, but it has a very thin layer of grass, so that the grass isn't providing a sponginess.
Fabulous. I can't tell you how much I love this part of the education that we're getting on this podcast, because it's so specific, and it's not necessarily mechanics. Right? There's elements of it, but there's so much more to it, and I really appreciate your knowledge on this, Terry. This is fabulous.
Well, I mean, I've spent a lifetime studying this game and 30 years in this industry and studying equipment and cause and effect, and why do I want to, die with all that knowledge? I mean, the only thing that to me, the fun thing about knowing something is sharing it with somebody that'd like to know it.
Yeah, you're a teacher.
And so I take great pleasure in that.
Oh, you do a great job. Thank you. Well, Steve, congratulations. You are now eligible to have a customized SCOR 4161 money club made for you, and the folks at SCOR Golf will help you do that. Tell us about the information they can fill out that will help you determine which is the best scoring club for them.
Well, what we've done is really recreate the short end of the set. It's no longer about being satisfied with a 9-iron and a pitch that match your 6-iron to look like a 6-iron, because that's not the right way to design those high loft clubs. It's no longer about playing, quote, wedges. The reason we don't use the term is we don't make wedges. What we're doing is so far evolved from wedges, and I've got a collection of old wedges, and your members have heard me say this before, but I've got wedges from the 40s and 50s that you can't tell the difference between them and a 2011 model or a 1992 model. There's been no evolution in this category, and the high loft golf clubs in the old days, Ben Hogan and all those guys, they never hit them over 25 or 30 yards. But we use these as full swing clubs now, and all that weight real low causes ballooning trajectories and inconsistent distance control. So every golfer's got their own right prescription.
Phenomenal. All right. Thanks so much, Terry. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you, Fred.